Okay, we're continuing on our theme of tefillot, prayer, and what they really mean, because it's important to have kavanah and you know exactly what you're saying. And today we come with one of the highlights that we say every single day is the Az Yashir Moshe prayer. Beautiful prayer. And we're just going to highlight just a few of the pisukim. As we know, this tefillah comes directly from the Torah. And when we include the Anshe Gedola, Knesset Gedola, when they composed all the tefillot, they put this Az Yashir Moshe at the very end of all the Pesukei de Zimra. Right? Why? Because it's the highlight. It really it's the exclamation point on all the Pesukei de Zimra. Right? Why? Let's understand exactly why. When we talk about Az Yashir Moshe, we're literally talking about Hashem splitting the Sea of Reeds. Right? And all the Jews are there. And there were several miracles that happened at that time. Everyone thinks of just splitting of the sea is the miracle. There were many miracles which we'll talk about right now. Now, when we say that the Shirah was recited here at Kriyat Yam Suf, right? This was a great miracle because not only did Hashem split the sea, but as Moshe Rabbeinu was literally saying the words of Az Yashir Moshe, 600,000 men and their wives and children were repeating what Moshe had said. Now, I don't think Moshe Rabbeinu had a loudspeaker. I don't think there was a microphone in the times of there. They actually heard, all 3 million of Bnei Israel heard Moshe Rabbeinu and repeated after him. And if you were to go even one more opinion after that, Rabbi Eliezer, who was the son of Rabbi Yosef Agilili, he says that the miracle was even greater because as they repeated every single word after Moshe Rabbeinu, not just the first sentence after he appeared, every single word. And then, of course, there was even the opinion of Rabbi Nehemiah, who explained by Rashi, said every single word was repeated. That Moshe Rabbeinu said every word, and then they said the word right after, and some even say concurrently with Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? Because Ruach HaKodesh was among them. Now, that's exactly why we're putting the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, put it exactly here as an exclamation point to all the Pesukei de Zimra, because it really affirms our great faith in Hashem, because there was a great miracle there that everyone had Ruach HaKodesh. To the tune of, they say they had Ruach HaKodesh, to the tune of Yecheskel, the prophet. Okay? Now, most of the focus on the Shirah is on returning the sea to its natural state. And what happened when the sea, of course, came crashing down? The Egyptians passed away, right? So the Chazal, they tell us, what do they say? Kashin mezunotav shel adam ki kriyat yam suf. What does that mean? One's sustenance is as difficult as parting of the sea. That's from Pesachim 118a. How do we mean this difficult for Hashem, right? It's not really difficult for Hashem. What is it difficult? It's difficult for us to understand how Hashem could have split the sea. Why? Because it goes against the natural order of the world, right? We can't understand such supernatural events. We understand how the walls could come crashing down because Hashem suspended the rules of nature, but then he returned the rules of nature back. So the waters came crashing down. But we don't understand how the Sea of Reeds could actually open. Some say they opened in 12 different places. And the seabed where Bnei Israel walked on was completely dry. That is the miracle that we don't understand, right? And there are two miracles of the Kriyat Yam Suf, among others. The first was, of course, a supernatural phenomenon of the parting of the waters. And the second, of course, when Moshe Rabbeinu lifted his arm towards the sea and the waters kind of came down, which came back to its original state. Let's just kind of pick a couple of pisukim that are really, really beautiful. Vayhi li lishua, and he was a salvation for me. So the Rabbanim, they tell us that there were many people throughout Egypt, Jews among Egypt, that even through the galut and the pain and the hardship of the slavery, they still maintained their an elevated spiritual life, if you will, because they maintained their faith in Hashem. Bitachon, we call it. It's even greater than emunah, bitachon, that they knew one day that they would be saved, right? Exactly why at the Seder table on Pesach, we have the charoset, right, which symbolizes the mortar of the bricks that we used to build, right? But it has, some people have the minhag of putting cinnamon strips in it, or we make it sweet, right? The Sephardim, we make it sweet. Why? Because we know ultimately that even though things represent bitterness, there will be sweetness at the end, because we have bitachon in Hashem that it's going to be sweet at the very end. So In fact, in the Shira Ma'alot that we sing before Birkat Hamazon, this comes from Tehillim 126, Rabbi Samson Hirsch, what he says, he offers a beautiful explanation. He says, Az yomru vagoyim higdil Adonai la'asot imele. What does it mean? Then they will declare among the nations, Hashem has done greatly with these. This means that at the time of the coming of Mashiach, it will be said that the nations that Hashem has done a great deed for the Jewish people, in that He has redeemed them from the suffering. However, to this, the Jewish people will respond, Higdil Adonai la'asot imanu, Hashem has done greatly with us. So what you, nations, do not understand is that God has done even a greater thing for us. And that is what? Hayenu semechim, which he translates as, meaning God's gift of bitachon. We remained happy even during the darkest times of the Galut. Okay? Then, of course, let's continue just a couple of more psukim on Az Yashir. Vehanvehu, the simple meaning, the pshat as we call it, and I wish to serve him in a beautiful way. So the concept of performing the mitzvot in a beautiful way, right? And then it continues, Amonai ish milchama Adonai shemo, which means Hashem is master of war. His name is Hashem. Now, the four-letter name of Yud Hey Vav Hey of Hakadosh Baruch Hu is used here twice, right? Amonai ish milchama, Amonai shemo. Why? Because it conveys the thought that despite the fact that he appears here as a man of war, right, who becomes a ravaging destroyer, right, his name still remains Yud Hey Vav Hey, which he is waging the war with what we call Midat HaRachamim. Always when you say Yud Hey Vav Hey, there's Rachamim, Rahmanut, there's compassion in how he does it, right? So even though he comes here and destroys the Egyptian, he's doing it with compassion, right? And so Rabbi Yochanan commented on the pasuk. He says, and one did not come near to the other all night. That's from Shemot, chapter 14, verse 20. The angels wanted, we all know this, the angels wanted to sing praises when Hashem destroyed the Egyptians. And Hashem famously responds back to the Egyptians. What did he say? My creations are drowning and you want to sing praises? This comes from Megillah 10b. So Hashem is rebuking the angels for trying to celebrate when he's destroying his creations. So this is a manifestation of Midat HaRachamim, right? This is again another proof that Hashem berachamim. He didn't enjoy what he was doing, right? So the concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroys the Rishaim as a result of his Midat HaRachamim, it's very difficult for us to understand. Very difficult, okay? Now the question, we must ask a question here. How come Hashem rebuked the angels for trying to celebrate, if you will, at the destruction of the Egyptians, yet he didn't say anything to us? We were singing Az Yashir Moshe, we were jumping and praising and dancing and thanking Hashem for the salvation, yet Hashem didn't rebuke us. So this gets very, very interesting. It tells us, the Midrash tells us, it says, En malach echad oseh shete shilichuyot. And it says, what does it say? It says, one malach cannot perform two tasks. That comes from Bereshit Rabbah, chapter 50, verse 2. A malach can only do one thing at a time. He cannot experience two things. So Hashem, when he gave the directive for the malachim to go destroy the Egyptians, they had one task and one task only. They cannot veer outside of that task. Therefore, by definition, they can't celebrate and go and destroy at the same time. But humans beings, we have the understanding to have rachamim, to have sympathy on the destruction of Hashem's creatures, but at the same time rejoice in our salvation, right? Now, we're going to continue and we're wrapping up in the next 3 minutes. So Chazal, they tell us 10 miracles were performed for our ancestors in Egypt, right? And then 10 at the sea. We have the 10 makot, and then there were 10 miracles in the sea. 10 plagues did the Holy One, blessed be He, bring upon the Egyptian in Mitzrayim, and 10 at the sea. That's directly from Pirkei Avot, chapter 5. What this means is that the very same events that Bnei Israel experienced as miracles in Mitzrayim and at the sea, they were makot to the Egyptians, right? So they were miracles for us, but they were makot, they were curses, right, to the Egyptians. Bnei Israel experienced them as their salvation, while at the same time the Egyptians felt them as pain and suffering. So the very same midat rachamim that is manifested to the tzaddik as a miracle, a nes, is to the rasha a makah. You understand the dual nature? Now, it's noteworthy to note that the 4-letter name of Hashem, Yud Hey Vav Kei, which always we said denotes Midat HaRachamim, is also mentioned 10 times in the Shirah. So this could very well be a reference to the 10 Makot and the 10 Nisim that the Jewish people celebrated. We're going to end with almost the last statement here of Al Yashir Moshe, Amonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. And pay attention because it's something very, very beautiful. Hashem shall reign for all eternity. Hashem will reign for all eternity. It's in the future tense, right? So Rabbi Yosef Haglili, he said, if Israel would have said at the sea, Hashem is king forever. In other words, if they would have said, Amonai Melech Le'olam Va'ed, instead Adonai Yimloch, Adonai Melech Le'olam Va'ed, no nation would have ever been powerful enough to dominate Bnei Israel. But since they only said Hashem will be king, this referenced the future. And if they would have said the other one, Hashem is king, they would have gone into Eretz Yisrael, Bid Beit HaMikdash, and it would have been at the time of the Mashiach. So the question is, why didn't they say it? Why didn't they say Hashem is king? Why did they say Hashem will be king? And the short answer is, we talk about freedom of choice. And this is exactly where the Bnei Israel understood that if they actually would have said that, they would have given up their freedom of choice. How can we understand this? Right? Here's how we stand it. Let's go back to Adam HaRishon. And you know there are 70 explanations to everything, right? So although Adam HaRishon, he was given one command, you can't eat from this particular tree, right? And although he had the opportunity to eat from the Etz HaChaim, he didn't. This would have assured him in everlasting life if he would have eaten from the tree of life, right? But he didn't do so. And why didn't he do so? The reason was he knew that by doing so, he would lose his what we call bechira. Bechira is freedom of choice. What do you mean? It would mean that man wouldn't be able to possess a moral freedom of choice. In other words, if he ate from the tree of life, we'd have no more decision. There'd be no more Yetzer Hara. He'd have everlasting life and would be really the Geulah, the time of the Mashiach. Adam HaRishon, he recognized that. He recognized it, and some say purposely ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why? Because he didn't want to give up the freedom of choice. He didn't want man to give up the freedom of choice. So why do I introduce Adam here? Because we're coming back to Bnei Israel here. The exact same thing at the moment of the splitting of the sea. They're singing Az Yashir Moshe, and it's the end of the song. They're saying, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed, instead of Adonai Melech Le'olam Va'ed. Hashem will be king, because they didn't want to take away the Bechira from Am Yisrael. They wanted the Geulah to be brought in themselves. They didn't want it to be so easy. They wanted to work for it. And that should be a tremendous lesson for us, Bezrat Hashem, that we shouldn't want things like immediately and right away. We have to work for it. These are like what we think as colossal mistakes from Adam HaRishon or Bnei Israel that we didn't usher in the Geulah, but no, we have to bring it in. So Bezrat Hashem, that should give us strength for the entire year. Yes, Abba.